Imagine sitting on a plane with your mother on Christmas Eve. You are 17 years old. You are going home to your father for Christmas. Then, lightning hits the wing. The plane begins to break apart at 21 feet. You are sucked out into the black night sky. Still strapped to your seat, you fall 2 miles through a thunderstorm, alone in the dark. 10 hours later, you wake up on the jungle floor. Broken collarbone, torn knee, eye swollen shut. Your mother is gone. All 91 other people on that plane are gone. You are 17 years old, alone in the Amazon rainforest. Nobody knows where you are. What Juliane Koepcke did next over 11 days, through one of the most dangerous jungles on Earth, is one of the most extraordinary survival stories ever told. This is that story. Most 17-year-olds who end up alone in the Amazon rainforest die. Juliane Koepcke didn't. And the reason why starts long before the crash. Juliane was born in Lima, Peru, in 1954. The only child of 2 German zoologists. Her parents had dedicated their lives to studying the wildlife of the Peruvian Amazon. When Juliane was 14, they moved the family deep into the jungle to establish the Panguana Research Station, a remote scientific outpost surrounded by hundreds of miles of dense rainforest. For 3 years, the jungle was her classroom. Her father taught her everything: how to move through dense vegetation, how to find water, how to follow streams downstream towards civilization, which animals were dangerous, which frogs were poisonous. He told her one rule she never forgot: if you are ever lost in the jungle, find a creek and follow it. Water always leads to people. She wasn't being trained for survival. She was just learning about the world she lived in. By 1971, the family had returned to Lima so Juliane could finish her final year of high school. She graduated on December 23rd, one of the best days of her young life. The following morning, Christmas Eve, she and her mother boarded Lanza Flight 508 from Lima to Pucallpa, a short flight to rejoin her father for Christmas. Her father had begged them not to take that airline. Lanza had already lost 2 aircraft in crashes in the previous 4 years. Its safety record was known to be terrible throughout Peru. They went anyway. All other flights were fully booked. Juliane wore a sleeveless mini dress and white sandals. She had candy in her pocket. She was going home for Christmas. She had no idea she would not see her father again for 11 days. December 24th, 1971, 12:36 p.m. Lanza Flight 508 entered a massive thunderstorm over the Peruvian rainforest. The turbulence was violent, immediately trays flying, passengers screaming, overhead compartments bursting open. Then lightning struck the right fuel tank. The wing exploded. The plane began breaking apart at 21,000 feet. In the chaos and the noise and the spinning darkness, Juliane felt herself being torn away from the cabin. The row of seats she was sitting in, 3 seats, still locked together, was ripped free from the fuselage and sucked out into the storm. She was still strapped in. She fell 2 miles through a thunderstorm, still attached to the seat row, spinning through clouds and lightning and rain. She described the sensation as oddly peaceful. The jungle canopy far below her, a dark green blur, the storm swirling around her. She lost consciousness somewhere in the fall. She woke up on the jungle floor. It was the next morning, Christmas Day. She had been unconscious for approximately 10 hours. The seats had landed in thick vegetation that slowed and absorbed the impact, the only reason she was alive. She took inventory. Broken collarbone, a deep gash on her right arm. Her knee was badly torn. Her right eye was swollen, almost completely shut. 1 sandal was gone. She was wearing a sleeveless mini dress in the middle of one of the most hostile environments on Earth. She called out for her mother. No answer. She called again and again. Silence. Just the sound of the jungle insects, birds, water dripping from leaves. She was alone. Day 1. The Amazon rainforest is not a place that forgives weakness. It is home to jaguars, caimans, anacondas, and hundreds of species of venomous snakes. The river systems carry piranhas and electric eels. The insects alone, mosquitoes, botflies, fire ants, can kill a weakened person through infection and blood loss. The humidity is suffocating. The canopy is so thick that even in daylight, the jungle floor stays dim and disorienting. Juliane remembered her father's rule. Find a creek, follow it downstream. She found a small stream and started walking. She had no food, no tools, no map, one sandal, a torn minidress, and a wound on her arm that was already beginning to attract flies. She walked for days. The jungle played tricks on her. Sounds that seemed close were far away. Paths that looked clear became impassable. Twice she thought she heard voices search aircraft. She realized, but so far above the canopy that they couldn't see her and she couldn't signal them. She ate nothing for the first 3 days. On day 4, she found some small, hard candies still in the pocket of her dress, the only food she had. She rationed them carefully. She drank from the stream. Her father had always told her that moving water in the Amazon is relatively safe. She trusted him. On the 4th day, she found the first bodies. 3 passengers from the flight, still strapped in their seats, half buried in the jungle floor from the impact. She recognized one of them, a woman who had been sitting near her on the plane. She was still wearing the same clothes. Juliane did not stop. She couldn't afford to stop. But on day 5, she found something that horrified her more than the bodies. Her wound had become infested with botfly larvae. Tiny white maggots, the eggs laid by flies in open wounds, were moving inside her arm. She could feel them. She remembered her father telling her that locals removed botfly larvae by applying a drop of gasoline or petroleum to the skin, suffocating them and forcing them to surface. She had no gasoline. She used the only liquid she had, the water from the stream. It didn't work perfectly, but she kept moving. By day 8, she had walked over 30 miles through the jungle, following the creek as it grew wider. Her wound was infected. She was severely dehydrated despite drinking from the stream. Her knee had swollen to the point where walking was agony. She kept walking. The physical dangers of the Amazon were constant, but the psychological weight was something else entirely. Juliane was 17 years old. She had just graduated high school. 2 days ago, she had been thinking about Christmas with her family. Now she was alone in a jungle that most trained survival experts would struggle to navigate, with a maggot-infested wound and one sandal, not knowing if a single other person from her flight had survived. She thought about her mother constantly. Maria Koepcke had been sitting right next to her when the plane came apart. Juliane had heard her say one last thing, a single calm sentence, in the chaos, before they were separated in the fall. She didn't know if her mother had survived the fall. She didn't know if she was lying somewhere in the jungle nearby, injured and waiting. Every time Juliane rounded a bend in the creek, a part of her expected to see her mother there. She never did. She also had to manage something most survival stories don't talk about, the sheer boredom and monotony of survival. Walking, stream, trees, walking, stream, trees. The same sounds, the same green walls, the same humidity. For 11 days. On day 9, she heard something that stopped her cold. An engine, not a plane. Something closer. A boat motor. Somewhere downstream. She ran. The motor sound faded before she could reach it. But it told her something critical. There were people nearby. There was a waterway large enough for a motorboat. She was close. On day 10, she found a small wooden boat moored at the edge of the river. A can of gasoline was sitting in it. She remembered gasoline removes botfly larvae. She poured it over her wound and used a stick to pull out 35 maggots. She counted them. Then she sat down beside the boat and waited. Hours later, 3 local lumbermen arrived. They stopped when they saw her, a teenage girl, alone, covered in cuts and insect bites, sitting next to their boat in the middle of the Amazon jungle. One of them recognized her from the newspaper reports. The crash of Lanza 508 had been in every Peruvian newspaper for over a week. Every one of the 92 people on board was presumed dead. Search teams had been sent out and come back with nothing. He looked at her and said, "Are you the girl who fell from the sky?" She said yes. They cleaned her wounds. They fed her. The next morning, they took her by canoe to the nearest town. From there, she was airlifted to a hospital in Pucallpa. Her father was waiting on the tarmac. He had spent 11 days believing his daughter and his wife were dead. He got one of them back. Maria Koepcke's body was found 3 days later, a short distance from where the seats had landed. She had survived the fall, but her injuries were too severe. She had died alone in the jungle, within miles of where Juliane had been walking. Juliane learned this in the hospital. She was 17 years old. Juliane Koepcke recovered fully from her physical injuries. The psychological recovery was longer. She went on to become a biologist like her parents. She returned to the Panguana research station in Peru and continued her mother's work. She eventually became its director. She still lives and works there today. In 1998, German filmmaker Werner Herzog, who had narrowly missed being on the same flight himself, having given up his ticket at the last minute, made a documentary about her called Wings of Hope. He traveled with Juliane back to the crash site in the jungle. She walked him through exactly what she had done, step by step, through the same terrain she had navigated at 17. He said afterward that watching her move through the jungle was like watching someone go home. There is something in that worth thinking about. Juliane survived because of knowledge, not luck. Not superhuman strength, not training specifically for this scenario. She survived because her parents had taught her how to read a jungle, taught her without knowing they were teaching her to survive. Her father's one rule, find water and follow it downstream, is the reason she is alive today. She has said in interviews that she never felt like a hero. She felt like someone who did what needed to be done, one step at a time, because there was no other option. She also said this, "I always knew there were people at the end of the river. I just had to get there." That's it. That's the whole lesson. You don't have to see the end. You just have to know it exists. You just have to keep moving toward it, one step at a time, through the heat and the insects and the pain and the grief and the jungle that wants to swallow you whole. She was 17 years old. She had one sandal, and she made it out. Subscribe to Impossible Survival, because survival isn't just a story. It's a reminder of what humans are truly capable of.